My name is Luis Miguel Lexo. I'm the Managing Director for BRIK Projects. We tokenise real estate property here in Australia, specifically around Brisbane, Gold Coast and Sunshine Coast, which is around 200-kilometre radius, with Brisbane being in the centre, Gold Coast being south of Brisbane, 100 kilometres south, and Sunshine Coast being 100 kilometres north, all on the coast. So again, we focus around residential real estate, A-class real estate. That's what some people call luxury real estate. That's really our niche that we focus on. That's where I've been as a CPA accountant for around 28 years, and equally the same time in real estate property in terms of our family properties, in terms of building and as well as renovating properties in the residential space. I guess this is my background. This is what we're doing. This is where my networks are. This is the massive point of difference that we bring in terms of when we're tokenising real estate, providing access to property to people all over the world. At the moment, we've got our first property that we've launched a few months ago called the BRIK, which is a property based in Brisbane. So it's around 5 kilometres from the Brisbane CBD, so right along the river. So that's our first property token series. We've got 10 more coming up in year one. We've got the next few will be also around the BRIK property in Brisbane. And then basically move into our first Gold Coast one, the 7th series, which is going to be called the BRIK Dolphin. We moved that to the Gold Coast. That's already been built at the moment. So we're going to plan these things ahead because property is a long-term game. So you need to be really looking ahead in terms of where these properties slot in. So BRIK Dolphin will be on the Gold Coast. There will be a second one following that on the Gold Coast as well. So my contacts, who they're build developers, they're currently building those properties out. So we've got some arrangements with them. And then basically we sort of come back to Brisbane and then go back to the Gold Coast in those next 10 properties. But yeah, the 7th one will be on the Gold Coast, with the rest up to the 6th one will be around the BRIK property. So that's sort of a bit of a timeline in terms of what's happened with our tokens in terms of BRIK token series that we're minting on the blockchain for all these properties that are coming up. Year two, we actually go up another level. We plan to have 20 properties tokenized in year 2. So it just gives you a bit of a timeline. We put some tweets out there in terms of showing out the 10-year plan in terms of a property's roadmap to basically show what our roadmap is around the properties we intend to tokenize over the next 10 years. Obviously, Brisbane is the 2032 Olympic city. So obviously there's a lot of growth still to come, even without the Olympics, given by nature what's happening here in Queensland, our state of Queensland, which is in terms of where we are. There's a lot of growth being driven by some of the factors that also have come out of COVID, given how we've handled COVID and what other states are looking to us we've had a lot of migration from interstate, from other states around Australia, because of obviously a great climate. People basically lost their business in other states and basically want to start again. They're looking at Brisbane and Gold Coast and Sunshine Coast where they want to start again their life. And again, we also have always been cheaper in property values-wise than other states, especially Victoria, which is Melbourne City, and also New South Wales, which was the Sydney city. So some of you would have heard of Sydney and Melbourne. Those markets have always been more expensive than ours. So they're sort of roughly always around sort of 2 times more than our average property here in Brisbane and Gold Coast. So we're having a lot of migration coming from those other states. Also having a migration from Australians been living overseas, and through COVID they're actually returning back home to their roots. So we've got a lot of activity from migration from interstate, as well as from Australians that have been living overseas coming back home, and also just general migration. People look in terms of where they're going to basically live their lives after COVID. So we're going to have a lot of migrations from other countries. So people have accumulated a bit of wealth and look in terms of where they basically go and continue living in as part of their family, looking at over the next few years. So again, and then basically got the Olympics coming out. That adds what I call it a big cherry on top from what we had been planning because we didn't expect to get the Olympics. We only got the Olympics late last year. So again, that's put another big cherry on top. So basically, that's pretty much in terms in a nutshell in terms of what BRIK projects, what we're doing, what our plans are going forward in a very sort of nutshell overview. We do buy NFT art, so we actually buy NFT art to hang on the walls of our properties, both the tokenised as well as our office. In the tokenised properties at BRIK at the moment, it owns 8 pieces of art, so that art's going to be hanged up on the wall, and those artists mint their NFT art on the Ravencoin blockchain. So we only buy NFT art from artists that are minting on the Ravencoin blockchain. So at the moment, BRIK series got 8 pieces of art there. And actually, to showcase the art, to showcase what is Brisbane and the things and information around Brisbane, our city of Brisbane. We've actually minted an NFT over the last few days. If you do like one of those, just DM me and I'll send you one of those NFTs that's got some QR codes that takes you to some videos and some information, facts about Brisbane. So if you like one, just DM me with your Ravencoin public address for me to then send that to you. But then just getting to the theme of today, sort of the nuts and bolts of the theme. We, in terms of accessing real estate in another country is always very challenging for people when people basically think about trying to buy property, real estate properly in the traditional way in another country is always very challenging because there's obviously issues to overcome. And sometimes you can't overcome. Well, most of the time you can't overcome it because there's rules in place that basically stop you from owning property in another country. If you have a look in terms of foreign ownership rules, so most countries around the world basically have rules in terms of whether foreigners can buy property in their country. I know here in Australia, we've got foreign ownership rules. Basically, it doesn't allow people to just go and buy investment properties in Australia if you're a foreigner. So if you're not a resident for our country, you're not allowed to buy real estate property here in Australia. You can buy if you come here to live. So if you've got a visa of some sort and you come here to live, you actually are allowed to buy a property to live in. That's sort of the only exception to the rule. But otherwise, no foreigners allowed to own properties here. We did have a few years ago some people sort of trying to bend the rules, especially coming out of the Asian markets that they were cashed up, basically trying to buy properties here. That basically was quite a focus for the government to try to address that issue. So again, and most countries around the world have got similar rules in terms of foreign ownership when it comes to buying real estate property. Some countries you've probably got a very limited number of countries that are very relaxed, obviously trying to encourage capital into their countries and obviously make an exception in terms of foreigners owning property. But generally speaking, that is one of the major issues. Again, in terms of the solution around that is through tokenized real estate because again, especially I can only talk from our perspective, from BRIK project's perspective, in terms of our model of owning property. So the BRIK property, for example, there's no issues, and the model that we've set up for all our tokenized properties, there's foreign ownership rules doesn't apply because of the model I've put in place. So again, that sort of eliminates that issue because basically foreign ownership rules, there's a set of rules in terms of direct ownership. And basically got to follow those or else you can't own property. But again, as I said, with what we've done from a BPC perspective, we basically have a model that all tokens being on the blockchain are given the boxes we ticked as far as from that perspective. We comply with all those rules as far as our BRIK tokenized properties. So there is one of the major issues in terms of when people start thinking about owning property in another country in the traditional way. That is always a massive barrier to be able to do so. Probably the other second issue is around tax. In terms of tax is always an area of concern for people wanting to buy property in another country. In terms of, if I want to buy property in another country, what are the rules that I in terms of what gains will there be in place in terms of if I buy then sell a property. Obviously, what are those and what are the rates applicable to foreigners if you are exempt in a specific country, and then basically do you have to provide. Obviously, if you own property in another country, there's obviously you need to provide some sort of to the authorities in terms of who you are and basically your tax file numbers and all that sort of stuff that goes with it. So in terms of from our perspective, when it comes to tax, it doesn't apply as far as in terms of property token owners. So what happens is basically when someone buys a property token, so using the BRIK koala as an example, when someone buys a BRIK koala token, basically if you do sell that token on a secondary market, and you make a profit on it, it's up to you to report that profit in your own respective country. So wherever you reside in, it's up to you to report that profit there. We don't provide any information to any countries in terms of who the token holders are. So there's no from our perspective, there's no requirement. A little bit different if you're an exchange. There is requirements on crypto exchanges to report if you are listed in particular countries to report to the respective tax office as we got here. So any Australian crypto exchange, they must report to the tax office of all the activities of buys and sells on the exchanges. And obviously, if you're an Australian resident for tax purpose, you've got to report those because the tax office knows. But as far as in terms of our BRIK tokens, there's no requirement. It's not any different in terms of when you own shares. You've got to report your capital gains on your shares. So it's the same rules. But obviously here, because our token holders come from all corners of the earth, and basically it's just a matter you have to self-report in terms of if you buy and sell and make a profit, it's up to you to self-report in your respective countries. There's no need for you to report here to Australia because, again, this is not your jurisdiction, unless you're an Australian, of course. It's a different story. But yeah, I mean, what happens in terms of the BRIK koala token series is owned by a special purpose vehicle. Obviously, the special purpose vehicle has to pay tax on the rents that's received. That's a given. So at the end of the year, it has its net profit in the special purpose vehicle for the BRIK koala property, and obviously will pay its taxes accordingly in that special purpose vehicle at company tax rates. So that's basically from our side. That's what we're going to do from the token hold perspective. It's up to you to report your capital gains to your respective tax authorities. So when you come on our platform, we don't ask for your tax file number because it's a non-issue. So there's not that sort of requirement. When you subscribe and you come on to our BRIK property token platform, you basically subscribe, you do your KYC and so forth. But there's actually no requirement for you to give us your tax file number because it doesn't apply. So yeah, just emphasise that bit is that just making sure that it's when you do buy and sell, you make a profit on the BRIK token series. It's up to you to self-report in your own respective countries those profits. But tax is a complicated area when it comes to people thinking about it. They might think that there's a barrier to owning property in another country. Again, it's I can only talk from our perspective. For token holders, in regards to token holders, it's a non-issue from a tax perspective. The other third part is in terms of we're talking about issues about accessing real estate in another country. Trust is a big thing. Again, when you go and buy real estate in another country, there's a process to buy. So trusting people to do the right thing by you in terms of find the right property, allowing to know what is the real value of the property. Because that's someone coming from another country, even another state for that matter. It's always hard to sort of gauge what the actual prices are doing in that specific location. And again, a lot of trust that you do put on people on the ground to be able to find you the right property. So that whole process of buying does need somebody to help you with that process. So again, it's one of those areas that it relies a lot on trust. And then I guess in terms of if you do buy traditional real estate in another country, then if you have the ability to do it, obviously the holding that property requires, again, somebody that you can trust on the ground doing the right thing by you, that's going to look after your interests. Obviously comes at a cost. Obviously you've got to pay somebody. If you've got a family at the location, you've got to pay somebody to manage that property for you. But they're managing more than just the normal process. They're managing all things to do with the property in terms of paying your taxes, doing all those activities that are required in that country for you to hold that property. So just has something, again, there's a big trust element there of the person you engage on the ground to keep managing that property in another country. And then also the process when it comes time that you do want to sell. It requires, again, another trust element, a big trust element in terms of who you engage to sell the property to make sure they're doing the right thing by you. Because, again, if you're not on the ground, you just rely on those people to take have the professionalism to be able to act in your best interests. So trust is a massive thing when you're trying to buy property in the traditional way in another country. And again, I guess this is where we've come in. From our perspective, for me, being in a CPA account in Australia for around 28 years, for me, it's obviously trust is a massive thing. How I've dealt with people, how I've looked after businesses, help them in terms of their journey, in terms of helping their business, helping their families that own those businesses. Most are family businesses, so we do it directly with the owners. And I guess there's a lot of trust that goes with it. So again, that trust element is something that that I've personally been involved with dealing with people for 28 years. And I guess the journey that we have that we're right now with tokenizing real estate, that's the same trust element that I give to people, the loyalty, because we're on a long-term journey with these properties. This is a journey that's going to be for a very, very long time that we're getting on the journey with people. So again, trust is a massive thing. So I like to think in terms of how I've dealt with people before, that basically continues as normal in terms of that trust element. In terms of when we're searching for properties to tokenize, we because we stay obviously involved with all properties. Not only acting for our token holders' best interest, but we're acting for everybody's best interest, including ourselves. Because again, we stay in that property. When all the properties we tokenize, we stay in. We keep a percentage of that property. So again, it's making sure that we stay committed to all property token series that we tokenize. So again, it's a long-term journey. And again, trust is a big element, and given how I've dealt with people, that trust continues as normal in this journey with our token holders. So again, like I said, out of all the issues, we always see trust as a big factor, and this is why we keep. I'm very transparent in terms of putting myself out there. And you see some of my BRIK walk videos, and I try to sort of educate people in terms of what's happening properly, and people can sort of see who I am. So again, that's really critical in terms of as people get to obviously see who I am and they're seeing the trust that I've dealt with people, and we continue to do so. One of the other issues too is around the inability to people to buy property in another country. Obviously, not majority of banks won't lend you funds to go and buy property in another country, because it's one of those things that what happens if something goes wrong, how can they actually get access or be able to repossess a property in another country? So a lot of banks do shy away from lending money to buy properties in another country. So again, with what we're doing here, there's no debt involved. So basically, when people buy tokens, they buy with their own funds, and basically, in terms of each token series, we have no debt involved. So the property tokens are owned outright by all token holders involved. So there's no banks involved, no finances involved. Hence, one of the big problems we're trying to solve was basically to get rid of banks, get rid of financing, get rid of debt when you're buying property. Because at the end of the day, we see that's critical in going forward. Banks, the banks' clunkiness of how they deal with people, how their models are in place. It makes it very hard for the average person to buy property, and actually people in general, not just the everyday person on the street to access property in terms of borrowing and ability to buy property, but also people in general, because I've seen some great balance sheets, and the banks still will become very challenging still to lend funds, and and I've seen all sorts of shapes and forms, and how ineffective the banks are, and they continue to be obviously hard. And sort of lastly, in terms of when we talk about issues around access to real estate in another country, one of the other major issues too is you've got people in developing countries. That's never been a thought for them to be able to have the ability to buy properties in another country, because, again, there's never been a system that they can do it, even if had the ability to, even if there was countries that allowed. A lot of people in developing countries, like in Africa, Asia, South America, they've just never had the means, the platform, the accessibility to go and buy properties, to go and buy real estate in another country. And again, this is where obviously this is a game changer with property tokenization on the blockchain, that now people from all walks of life, from all corners of the earth, can actually access real estate property, tokenized real estate property. All they need is a mobile. And the least you need is a mobile to be able to access the platforms on the blockchain to then be able to go and buy tokenized property tokens. So again, this has opened up a massive channel for people in developing countries, and again, whether it's anything blockchain really, in terms of whether it be crypto projects, whether it be property tokens, whether it be DeFi. So basically, it's just, and NFTs for that matter, it just has opened up a massive window for people to actually now get ahead in life and be able to achieve their aspirations and visions for their family that they never had before, but now with blockchain, they've got the ability to. And we're seeing a lot of that, especially in Nigeria, because they've actually been one of the fastest adopters of cryptos, anything blockchain. Again, it's head off to Nigeria in terms of the people, that they see this as a massive window to be able to improve their lives and be able to achieve their dreams and aspirations. So again, with that was just sort of the last area of issues that we see accessing real estate, tokenized real estate in another country. Which we like to think that from a BRIK perspective, we've addressed all those issues and basically now have the ability, people now have the ability to access our property tokens on the blockchain. So again, it's a massive wave that is starting to really getting bigger and bigger. Again, still very early, but I think as the more education awareness there is out there across the world, people start to realise that they can actually access real estate in any country that they like. Obviously, we're doing it here in Australia. There's obviously platforms already in America. We've got two that are coming up, two platforms coming up on the blockchain, on the Ravencoin blockchain with Sarah and Dan with Hydro Chain. We've also got Jake's Minat from his Well Homes. He's coming up in 12 months' time. So we've got some great ones on the Ravencoin blockchain. We've got obviously others in other chains as well. So there is a wave that is happening, and I guess it's just a matter of people start knowing what it is and seeing if tokenized real estate can actually add to their existing property portfolio or start their journey in property, in real estate property. So those are sort of the issues that I wanted to raise in terms of when people are thinking about accessing real estate in another country, that actually now they can actually achieve that, whether it be ours or other tokenized platforms, property tokenized platforms. Now people can access real estate in another country, and the number of players in terms of my colleagues that are doing it, that are looking or that are doing or planning to do it on the blockchain, it's growing. I'm having conversations with people, probably a couple of conversations a week on average now, that people are actually reaching out to me and ask me about it in terms of if they were to tokenize, what's the process involved in tokenizing their real estate properties on the blockchain. And again, it's the interest and awareness is actually becoming quite large. The wave is growing. So again, it's and obviously we're always encouraging people to look at the Ravencoin blockchain, because that's although we started with the first one, BRIK, on the Ethereum blockchain, we switched across for the second series and beyond to the Ravencoin blockchain, given the issues that the Ethereum blockchain was having. So again, that's people are asking what chain, and basically I'm telling them, well, Ravencoin blockchain was purposely built to tokenize assets on it. Obviously, being a fork of the Bitcoin blockchain that has the fundamentals of the Bitcoin blockchain, but obviously purposely built to tokenize assets on the blockchain as Ravencoin is. Hey, look, I'll open up for questions that you might have, or if you can't talk, please DM me for any question that you might have. But yeah, so I just wanted to cover those things that that people have, those barriers in their mind that when they're trying to tokenize real estate, as to what the issues are in terms of the traditional real estate, and what blockchain, what tokenized real estate is actually doing to solve all those issues that people before just wouldn't even go there to be able to access real estate in another country. I know I've looked at it over the years, and in terms of traditional real estate, and it was just too hard. Had some people that I know, they've actually bought properties in Portugal, for example. But that's brought them a lot of pain, especially with people on the ground. So again, I've looked at it before, but I just put it too hard. But now with tokenized real estate, it just makes things a lot easier for people to access real estate in another country. Yeah. Oh, that's Jay. How are you? You good?
Yeah, all good, thank you. You all right?
Yeah, I'm good, man. I'm good. It's sunny today, so it's good. It's sunny outside, so we've got some good weather. It's good.
Fine. That leads into my question.
Yeah.
Basically, I mean, just kind of leads on from what you were talking about before. So a bit part of what A-class luxury homes means to people who don't necessarily have a lot. So like there's other countries like in Africa and other places, and a lot of what they're doing is buying a piece of a property as almost a little bit of hope and a better future. So like what I'm kind of just wanting to find and dig into a little bit is just to find out, because a lot of their life is about sustainability and how they live from day to day. So I was just wondering about the actual property that's in the BRIK to find out a bit more of. We know it's obviously a luxury property, just to find out about if it's got any like renewable technology or anything in it. I just wanted to find out because I was curious.
Yeah, look, in terms of the properties that we obviously tokenize in in America, it's referred to as residential A-class. In Australia, we refer to them as luxury properties because that sort of tells you what it is. But say, for example, BRIK, that's a 2-year-old property. So that one there, it's got some base, got some solar panels on it, and because there is regulations in Australia when you build properties that you have to have certain things, like say for example, hot water systems have to be solar. That's always a sort of a ticks on the box from the scope that you have to have within the property. It's not very strict when it comes to what you should have, but I think going forward they'll be more strict in terms of the building code, in terms of renewable energy, things you must have in the property. I think that's something we've been talking about here in Australia, both from a builder's building perspective, building code perspective, from a green energy perspective as well, in terms of the conversations. And but at the moment they encourage to do so, whether it be in terms of solar energy on the house, whether it be battery storage, because obviously if things go down, it's in terms of being able to have that offline battery to be able to keep power in the home. And just in general, the things that obviously make, in terms of when a house is being built, in terms of the type of materials that are used and so forth. But we're probably 10 years away from it. But in terms of what we're doing, these first few properties, basically the first 10 properties in the mix, they're going to also be already built homes. So again, we can suggest, like say for example, the one on the Gold Coast. I've made some suggestions around that. with the solar and everything, but I can't dictate too much at this stage because at the end of the day, it's a bit different if you're actually going and building ourselves, and which we are. And we see, once we get past say in year 3, we are going to be building some of the properties ourselves. So obviously we engage builders to do exactly what we want as far as the design is concerned. But given these first 2 years, we just want to make things very simple, get properties, and obviously look for properties that are energy efficient, and obviously have more bells and whistles as far as solar panels are concerned, in terms of battery storage is concerned, and how it's been built. So that is part of our criteria when we're looking at a property, what we're going to be tokenizing. In year 3, that changes a little bit because and the reason why we're not building our own as yet to tokenize is because, as you probably experienced over there, Australia, in England and across the world, is the supply chain is a massive issue as far as getting materials, and also the cost of materials, the ever increasing cost of materials. So that's something that we don't want to have those variables in play when we're doing what we're doing. Again, it's there's already enough variables in terms of what we're doing. That obviously we've got to, in terms of launching the first token series and all the ones coming up and find those right properties. We did want to put that extra pressure on us to then also trying to build a property and not knowing what the exact time frame is, and because of that whole supply chain issue. I know Dan and Sarah with their project in America, the hydro chain project, I know they've had quite a few delays as far as accessing materials, and because they're building their own. They're tokenizing and building. They're building their own property. They're tokenizing. So, and obviously Dan being a builder, I know in terms of conversations I've had with them that the whole supply chain has been a massive issue for them with materials, accessing materials, and obviously I'm seeing here at the coal front here with some of the guys that I know that are build developers that we're going to be buying from, the issues that they're experiencing with the supply chain. So again. But probably, I know there's probably a long way to answer your question. But the point of it is that we do look for those things in terms of the type of the energy that's been used, in terms of being a green, energy friendly properties, certainly in our criteria when we're looking for that. So the BRIK Wells has got some solar panels on it, and again, it's. I like to have more, but at the end of the day, it's one of those things that people are starting to realise more and more as they're building properties. They're all things that should be a standard in any new build, especially in luxury properties, because you've obviously got the budgets to do it. You've got obviously an increasing property market value, so you've got budgets to do it, to be able to put all those bells and whistles when it comes to energy efficient homes. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. Let's say.
Yeah, no, that's spot on. Cheers. It does make sense to start with obviously the pre-built, the homes that are already existing with the A-class luxury homes, and that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
It's
the one on the Gold Coast, the one on the Gold Coast, the BRIK Dolphin. They've got a few coming up in the next 2 years. So I'm actually talking, because I'm having meetings with the build developer, and I've said to them, these are the things I like to see in those homes. Whether we buy them off you or not. But again, I think that's what people are wanting more, especially in luxury properties. So I think, again, they'd be mad not to listen to me because, again, I'm at the coal front. Obviously, I'm a potential buyer for their properties, and he'd be mad not to put, because I'm sure I'm not the only person asking for it. I'm sure there's other people that be thinking the same thing, and even more so as we go forward from that energy perspective, green energy perspective is concerned. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Spot on. Thank you very much for answering the question. I'll leave it there for now.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure, Alistair. Thank you. Hey, Matt, how are you? You well?
Hey, how's everybody doing?
Very well.
Good. So a couple of my questions were answered, and this is, by the way, one of my favorite projects because I always bet on the jockey, and I'm a big fan of BRIKs. There's no collaboration, nothing going on. I always just... I appreciate hearing all the knowledge in Aussie real estate and international real estate, and BRIK's full of it, full of passion, and we appreciate that, BRIK.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, for sure. I think we're all going to have tax loss carryovers, for sure, going into next year. I can almost guarantee that. I hope not, but I can almost guarantee it, especially those that were leveraged. As far as Brisbane, the city goes, I know how much rapid growth, even in the last quarter or two. Do you think the city can maintain growth like this heading into, obviously, the Olympics in 32? It's going to pick up. But I've heard and read some major growth happening in Brisbane.
Yeah, there has been. I mean, if you have a look at the last 12 months, we've had 26% was actually the official figure given for the last quarter, the annual increase in property prices here in Brisbane. So again, some areas more than others, some 30%, some 20%, but the official was 26%. And now, in terms of can we sustain this sort of growth? Look, over the next 12 months, I don't think we can be at 26%. I think it'll be more conservative, more sort of around 12 to 15% is my call, because we've got some things in play, as I mentioned before, with interstate migration. We've got Aussies coming back home after COVID. And then obviously with the Olympics, the Olympics always goes mad 3 years out from the actual Olympics. Historically, if we have a look at what happened to Sydney back in 2000, and I've got people that were on the ground there, good friends of mine were on the ground there in real estate. They were build developers, and they experienced 3 years out massive growth. 3 years out. So, look, in terms of, again, I always come back to fundamentals, and obviously given my training as a CPA account, I always go back to fundamentals when forecasting things out and making sure you stay conservative in those forecasting. And basically the facts are in the past, properties here in Brisbane and just generally in Australia, generally speaking, it doubles every 10 years. So here in Brisbane in particular, it's even I actually went back, and the document's on the website with the BRIK koala, just showing some of the facts. In a typical property like the BRIK koala, what has that property done over the last 40, 50 years? And again, just shows you that typical property in the area, because it's a very very it's Ascot and Hamilton, where the BRIK koala is actually one of the sort of more prestigious areas here in Queensland, in Australia for that matter. So you've got a lot of executives, there's a lot of high wealth in the area and so forth. So if you have a look at that BRIK koala property over the last 40, 50 years, it's always doubled every 10 years. So the facts there speak to it. Now we're saying the forecast we're putting in place for example using the BRIK koala is we're saying that's going to be around $9.1 million in market value come 2032. So that's around 3.5 times its current value. And that's what we're basically saying. Properties in Brisbane and Gold Coast, they're going to be 3.5 times its current value come 2032, so in 10 years' time. And that's being conservative, because as I said, it's I'd rather be conservative when we're forecasting out. And if it's more, fantastic. But I think what we've got to also remember is that these properties have been held long-term indefinitely. So yes, if you have a look historically after the Olympics, 2 years after the Olympics, there is a little correction that happens after each Olympics with the local property market. But again, it's okay because we're here for the long term. And so you're going to have this sort of big boost, and then it's going to sort of come down a little bit, but then it's going to keep rising after that. So that's just what property does. So in terms of forecasting out that the properties where they are today, it's going to be 3.5 times more in 10 years' time. That's still very conservatively. But yeah, look, over the next 10 years, as I said, over the last 12 months, we've had 26% growth, capital growth here in Brisbane. It's not going to be 26%. I can assure you. I can bet on that one. That over the next 12 months, it won't be 26%. It'll be more like, say, 12 to 15%, to be more sort of conservative growth. But if you have a look over the next 10 years, we see it sort of be 3.5 times its current value, just using basic fundamentals and basically where those key drivers are happening over the next 10 years. Yeah. So I hope that sort of answers your question, Matt.
Thank you. And just a quick follow-up, if you don't mind, and maybe you address this, but is the Aussie government forcing builders to use certain materials? Are there, obviously there's materials, there's the supply chain backlog, but how are they, number one, forcing them with restrictions, with regulation and materials, and are any of the builders having major issues in accessing their materials via the supply chain in Australia?
In terms of, from a government regulation perspective, basically the building codes are controlled by states, so it's at a state level legislation. So in terms of them, there is some things that they're encouraging builders to do when they're building new homes. Obviously, being energy-friendly homes, the type of the materials. There's no legislation. With the only thing there's that with the hot water systems, they do require you to put solar for hot water systems. So that's part of the code that there is in place. But there's no really laws that are forcing from in terms of what sort of things they have to have from the energy perspective, and what type of materials they have to use. So there's no speculation. There's no sort of enforcement from that perspective as far as legislation is concerned. Materials with again just by market forces. Basically, we've had a lot of like timber, for example. Timber over the last 12 months has increased by 30% in terms of pricing, because again with that whole issue of the supply chain and supply and demand, given obviously the property has been in terms of construction here has been obviously it's been on turbocharge. So we've had that has obviously impacted demand and supply for timber. So what's actually happening, especially around residential projects, where some builders have actually switched from timber framing to actually steel framing. So I know one of the build developers that we are going to be buying from in terms of the properties. They switched actually from timber framing to concrete. Actually, the BRIK Dolphin property is actually one as an example. That it was actually going to be a timber frame home in terms of within the insides. But given the want to get hold of timber, and two, in terms of the pricing of timber, it actually economically made more sense to switch to concrete, to basic concrete structure. So that BRIK Dolphin, that's the first Gold Coast property. It's actually a concrete construction, total concrete construction as far as the infrastructure is concerned, with the walls and so forth. Which if you're European and love for, especially for an Italian and Portuguese, the love for concrete, I did actually fall in love with it, because it's concrete is that long-lasting structure. It's always going to be there, because my father, he was a former working carpenter, so he worked with concrete all his life as far as building, and whether it be buildings in terms of 40-story, 50-story buildings to stadiums and to properties. So again, it's we do love concrete. So. But the second part to your question, Matt, in terms of the supply chain is massive. It's been a massive problem. So people basically, when you, as a builder, if you're planning out your build and you've got timber timber framing involved in your structure, you basically got to be ordering that 3-4 months out. And obviously, it's also the cost wise, because you've got to outlay your capital first before you see any money as a builder. So you've got to get all that in first, to making sure, one, you secure a price, and two, make sure you've got the materials when you're about to start your project. So supply chain has been a massive issue, especially around timber. And although people have switched to steel frames to basically negate that issue with access to timber, the problem there is basically is put a massive demand on steel framing as well, because now steel frame, when I looked last 2 weeks ago, steel frame itself was actually increasing pricing to around 25%. Can get steel framing, but the problem is it's actually also increased around 25% in the last 12 months, the cost-wise. So supply chain is a massive problem. That's why I say that for us, will be year 3 till we actually start building our own, to tokenize, engaging builders to build our own. Again, which obviously puts a bit more of puts a little journey as part of the process of building a home, seeing token holders getting on the journey of building a home. But again, at the moment, it's just too hard for us to have that, be able to be precise with the timing of things. So at the moment, the first 2 years, it's just a matter of basically grabbing properties that are newly built ones that basically say that ticks all the boxes, and be able to tokenize those properties. Yeah.
Thank you so much for letting me ask a couple of questions. But I love that maneuver around timber. Unfortunately, now you're running into the steel issue. But concrete, I love it. Love getting the edge here and there legally. But thank you so much for letting me ask some questions.
No, thank you, Matt. Thank you. And I thought you'd love the concrete part of that. Given you Italian blood, Matt, I thought you'd love the concrete aspect of it.
It melted my heart. We're a real match now.
Thanks, man.
Thank you, BRIK.
Thanks, man. Fantastic. Let's chat, yeah.
No, I was just listening to you guys speaking. I just heard like opportunity there. Concrete structures are really good for like absorbing heat. Yeah. So, like, you're talking about most properties were needing solar anyway, like for the heating system. Yeah. Places here have been taking, like, wet solar, and dumping the heat into, like, the concrete structure, to use that as, like, a storage bank. So then, that was basically your own night and whatnot. But, yeah, anyway, it probably doesn't apply much to you guys.
I totally agree with you in terms of, with the concrete structures. Obviously, been around it all my life. Concrete structures. The thing is with concrete, obviously, historically has been more expensive to build with concrete as opposed to obviously timber framing or steel framing in terms of homes, residential homes. And I've built with steel frames before. I've built with timber frames. The only thing is, in the past, the price difference, cost difference is actually a huge cost difference in the past. But now, given what's been happening, it's actually on par. And I agree with you in terms as far as the concrete does actually retain heat. So in summer it's actually cooler, and in winter it's actually warmer, because what happens is it retains the heat of the sun during the day, during winter. So it does actually help with that energy efficiency perspective. Look, I'm not the expert in terms of how much and what percentages are and so forth, as far as in terms of from an energy perspective, but the fundamentals, I know the fundamentals of it, that is the case in terms when it comes to concrete homes, the ability to be cool and the ability to retain heat in especially during those winter months. Not that we have many winter months here. I mean, it's actually cold at the moment here in Brisbane, and when I say cold, it's gotten down to 7 degrees Celsius. That's what we class as cold, and we probably have 2 or 3 weeks of it, and that's pretty much it. But during the day, you're still walking around. It's winter, you're still walking around with a t-shirt and the shorts during the day. So if you can call that winter, but yeah. So. But yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I think going forward, I think people will start looking at concrete more in terms of their structures, because from a cost perspective, it's pretty much on par now. I know with the BRIK Dolphin, given the build developer, I've had this many discussions with him, and that started as a timber structure. But given how fast things move, they switched to concrete, and I've been through it. I mean, they're basically at the moment in. They've closed. It's in a closed-up stage. They basically now starting to do all the internal fittings. So just walking in it, you can just feel it just feels so different in the concrete structure. So if you've been in a concrete built home, you'll know what I'm talking about. But so I was actually there 2 weeks ago. It just has a different feel to it, in a good way. Yeah.
That's fine. Yeah, just thought I'd jump in there and add that little bit because, optimize it.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, one of the things I'm also pretty passionate about is also in terms of battery storage. That's something when we do start building, that's something that, when it comes to automation, in terms of battery powered and solar, and also the things that are on my wish list for the future tokenized properties when we do actually build in year 3. Especially with battery storage, I think there's a huge case study for battery storage, especially with challenges in terms of energy pricing and basically. Although electric cars have been great, but I think what electric cars are doing here in Queensland, especially Brisbane, there's more electric cars on the road. And I don't think we've got the infrastructure as far as the electrical infrastructure, power infrastructure, to be able to deal at this stage with all this additional demand for battery charging of electric cars. And so I think they'll be even more important going forward for any property to have the ability to have battery storage on site in case the power goes down for whatever reason because of these high demands. Or even just last 2 days, they were actually warning us about there might be some blackouts because of people putting on their heaters. And again, we're pretty, we're a bunch of whingers here in Australia, especially in Brisbane, that we think when it gets down to 7 degrees Celsius, that's it's really cold. Yeah, it's people put on their heaters to be able to deal with the cold at night time because it's 7 degrees Celsius. But again, but I think it's going to be something that any property here in Brisbane, or just in the state of Queensland, is making sure that you've got battery storage on your property, because I think that's going to be a requirement. You think in terms of some power goes down in terms of your fridges and your freezers, and be able to continue to work if you're working from home. I think that's going to be even a greater demand from that perspective. Yeah, and you know that, Alistair, given obviously your background in terms of your background with dealing with major projects, electrical engineering, major projects in your past. They're all things that obviously you know really well, the challenges.
Yeah, no worries. I'm actually writing something you know a little bit about, but it'll help people trying to make decisions about that batteries and electrical sizing and some how to size solar and bits and pieces. Just because I saw a bit of a need, especially around crypto and people trying to decentralize everything and stuff like that. So yeah,
look forward to
that'll be interesting in a week or two.
Look forward to it. Share around. Probably just pause to say hello to Philip Cow. Hope you're well. Coolio, Indy, SOS. I also haven't said hello to Raven Rebels. Apologies if I didn't mention you before, but I'd always like to do a call out, making sure everyone's all well, and thank you for joining us. Look, we're sort of just wrapping up now. It's if there's no other questions, we'll sort of start the wrap up of this. I do try to keep it to an hour. I know people have got things to get to, and I really appreciate your time to join us. As always, this has been recorded, and we always also put it up on our YouTube channel, the audio recording, because obviously Twitter Spaces only stay alive for 30 days and then it's gone. So people can always check out our BRIK BC YouTube channel for the recordings of all the sessions. Look, in terms of, as I mentioned at the start, we did mint an NFT called Brisbane. We minted that on the Ravenist platform, NFT marketplace platform. It's got some QR codes in there to be able to, so you can see what's Brisbane. There's a video in there, the link, a QR code, link to a video that's basically showcases Brisbane. There's one for some facts as well, some of the properties around Brisbane. So it just gives you a bit of a grounding and understanding about Brisbane. Obviously, that's where we're tokenizing at the moment. Before we move on to the Gold Coast, we'll also put one on the Gold Coast as well. But anyway, this NFT, if you like one of those, just DM me with your Raven Coin public address, and we'll send you one of those. At the moment, the BRIK Wallers, we're up to 1,140 as stated on the website. So if you go on the website, on the BRIK website, we have a koala count there, so keep you up to date in terms of how many that we've sold so far. So as most people know, that they're $80 each. So we've got 33,000 available to be sold. So again, we'll continue to focus around people all over the world in the retail market, particularly because this is what our vision was, to provide access to anybody, all all corners of the globe, especially in the retail perspective, that people have always been, have been restricted from accessing, projects, whether it be real estate, whether it be crypto projects, because a lot of time you have to be a sophisticated investor, as it's called, or a higher wealth individual to be able to access new projects. And again, this is very much what we're doing, providing access to anybody from all corners of the world to accessing real estate property here in Australia. Just some things before we close up. Just on the wrap up. So we got our weekly event tomorrow. So what is real estate tokenization? We're just a bit of that I will host with Jake Menard. So we do that show once a week. So Wednesdays 3 p.m. US Eastern Standard Time. That provides us the ability to update people what's happening in real estate tokenization. People from different areas of tokenized real estate that has the links to it, and basically we always have a speaker. So it's on per normal time tomorrow. Please join. Also, we're looking forward to Kevin Lynch, the well-known photographer. He actually launched his land art collection this week. We're looking forward to obtaining one of his art pieces for the BRIK property, well, at least one piece. So again, he's bearing his soul in his land art. Obviously, Kevin Lynch worked with various people in the entertainment industry in terms of his in terms of photography, whether it be in sport, like Kobe Bryant, whether it be with the movies, the television series, whether it be music. So he's had a vast experience in dealing with people and places all over the world in his career, but now has actually launched his first NFT collection of land art. And again, we look forward to having one of these pieces in our BRIK property token series. So again, I've actually pinned it up on the tweet pins on here. So there's one of the tweets that he posted up. So if anybody's interested, you can have a look at that, as well as all the other pinned tweets that I thought would be relevant to today's session. I think that's pretty much it. Again, really appreciate everyone joining us. And keep enjoying your day. Keep having fun. It's important. And again, my thoughts go out to those people who in the crypto market that has been hard on them at this stage in terms of the crypto market being down. But as I said, stay positive. We're here for the long term, and keep building, keep focusing, go back to your vision in terms of why you're doing what you're doing. And don't let hurdles affect your journey. So thank you all. I really appreciate your time, and please stay safe, and we'll speak soon. Take care. Bye-bye now.